Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Preptober live stream, fourth one to be exact. We are excited to do another writing sprint, get some work done, and chat with Rachel Bateman. But before we bring her on, I couldn't be more happier to be joined today by Emily, our social media manager, and Riley, our literary specialist and publishing instructor. How are you, girls? Let's do a little check in. How are you?
Good. It's been a long week already and it's Tuesday. That's
It's
why.
it's Tuesday. Oh my God. Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that you're all okay. My day. Okay, a funny anecdote to start us off. The fire alarm in my apartment went
Oh,
off this morning, and
oh,
it couldn't stop ringing for 3 hours. And
oh,
of course, yeah.
yikes.
Yeah, and of course I couldn't leave the apartment because I had to wait for maintenance to come and fix it, right? So it was certainly an interesting morning. Do not be fooled by how stunning I look. I actually have a split in my cheek. And I'm glad that Rachel is here to hopefully make it better. So yeah, a couple of announcements before we bring her on. We have received the official NaNoWriMo ads and logos, which you can see in the corner of the live stream.
Ooh.
Yes, meaning now we actually have proof that we are sponsors of NaNoWriMo this year. Our lovely Emily will be posting all about that, all of our social media very soon, which will be linked down below. Follow us if you do not follow us already. And second announcement, well, more like a clarifying FYI statement rather than an announcement. I received a couple of messages from some authors and subscribers of our channel, which I very much appreciate, regarding the last week's live stream and our guest Christina Depchila's recommendation for up and coming authors to start acquiring agents and try and get their books traditionally published. Now, not many things in this world can break my heart as much as implications that me or my colleagues or anyone here in manuscripts are working towards exclusion rather than inclusion. Manuscripts is an independent press. Yes, we encourage people to publish independently because, in our opinion, it's more accessible. But we do not trade in putting other businesses, God forbid, other people down, and our goal is to help authors publish books. But yes, but our um, core beliefs that are even our official company motto are educate, empower, motivate. Educate being the key word here. So we do not bring on just independently published authors. We talk to as many publishing industry professionals as we can to give you access to insider information only they have, for you to make an educated decision about what to do with your unpublished manuscript instead of being shamed or pressured into making a decision. And Eric Kester, the CEO of this company, interviewed Caroline Kepnes, the author of You, on his YouTube channel just last week. Does this mean he denounces independently published authors because he talked to an agent and author? No, he just wants to give you as much info about writing and publishing from the most qualified people he can find. So please, let's be civil to each other and support each other. Um, there is plenty of room at the top for all of us, agented or unagented. So thank you. And speaking of agented authors who are on top of their game, without further ado, please let me welcome to our community author of 99 Days of Lainey McGuire and most recently Make the Fireflies Dance, the wonderful, the unique Rachel Bateman. Hello, girl.
Hi, how are you?
Hi there. So, how's Montana these days?
Montana is starting to get cold. It's that time of year. We had a very long summer, which is rare, and so now it's cold and windy, but nice. So,
That is very nice. So, Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
of course.
As I have indicated, you are an agent and author, and you have announced your project with NaNoWriMo. But before we get into all of that, I want to start at the very beginning. Let's just get to the core of writing. And today's topic is basically how did you find your unique voice as a novelist? That's what we want to hear from the top to the bottom, everything.
Okay. So if you want to start at the very beginning,
Yes.
I wrote as a kid. You've heard that story from everyone basically. And then I didn't for a long time. I went to massage therapy school. And right before I was supposed to graduate, I obliterated my shoulder. And just like massage was not going to be a thing, whatever. But I had to have it completely reconstructed. And that meant I was on a lot of drugs for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And they made it so I couldn't sleep. And when I couldn't sleep, I started writing. And if I look back on it now, like I'm sure it's scary because
Yeah.
drugged writing is not good writing. But it made me realize how much I loved it. So I started. But as far as finding my unique voice, it really just came with doing it, a lot of practice.
Mm-hmm.
I read a lot of the kind of books that I was writing and got a good feel for what was out there. But what it came down to, and what it still comes down to me, is just I write it how I want to read it,
Mm.
and just how I put it out there. It's really easy, especially if you're trying a new genre or a new kind of story, to want to write it like your favorite writer or to make it sound like this book that you love or that's very popular. That's really easy. And that's not a bad thing to do that. It gives you
Yeah.
practice. You can try different things out. But in the end, just writing it how you want to read it and how you would just naturally express it, that's when your voice is going to come through.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that vulnerable story with us. I really appreciate it. It just really shows how raw your writing can get, especially if you're in a tough place. I'm sure that many writers will appreciate you hearing that someone who is a success and like arguably is a success. So I really, really appreciate it. And
Can I pause real quick? Because my
oh
internet just
yeah,
got a little weird. So I need you to back up a tiny bit so I know what you're saying. Sorry.
of course.
Um,
Did you freeze on us? Our internet is a little weird.
I did, but now I can see you all.
Okay. Can you, Riley, Emily, how's your internet? Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Rachel, try and say something if we can hear you.
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Okay, now it's fine. Yes, you
Yeah.
unfroze. Yes, you got frozen a little
Okay,
bit.
that was weird. Okay.
It was. Listen, it's
So,
technology. It's unreliable.
yes.
Yes. So I was saying that you are without a doubt, a success, and I'm sure that many writers will appreciate hearing you say that you, even though you were in a tough place, you found joy in writing. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And yeah,
Right.
that's
Before I proceed, because I do have a follow-up questions. Girls, Emily, Riley, do you have any questions for Ray?
I am curious, in like your writing style, are there any things that you feel like you tend to lean on, or something that is like a key component of your style? Because I know, like, for me, I, as like a reader, it's like those details and descriptions that a lot of time pull me in. So when I'm writing, that's something that I notice kind of comes across in my writing, no matter what it is, a short story, a poem, a longer book, whatever it is.
I'm trying to think here. I definitely, every book I write, I find certain things that I favor, but it's not the same across every book. So like there are times like editing a book and my editor's like, you've used the same line like 4 times now, right? Throughout the book. But in general, I think one thing I really lean to no matter how I write is viewing it in a very cinematic way. With the pacing and how I set the scene. And I think that comes from having written screenplays before I wrote novels.
Mm.
That's like how I trained myself to write, is by learning screenwriting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why. And I just really love movies. So I think that would be it for me, is really looking at the whole picture as if I were sitting down and watching a movie. Like, how would this play out? How is the pacing?
Interesting.
So there are some, like, I do dive into some descriptions, but I focus more on the pacing and getting it, and dialogue. Like, if I were to toot my own horn, dialogue's my my strong suit. So I really like that.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. And you make an interesting point because we often argue around here whether screenwriting and book writing, like how should we, to what extent should or shouldn't like incorporate that, like to do a crossover. So what are your thoughts on that? Like how much do you incorporate from your experience from your screenwriting into not basically into creating a novel? Because from what I understand, I'm not a screenwriter, then like again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're very different types of writing.
They are very, very different. So like a novel that I would write at probably 80,000 words would make maybe 22,000 words in a screenplay. That's
Hmm.
like, it's much more
Time
sparse. But
restriction,
as
right?
far
Like
as,
that's the biggest one, right? Like you
yeah,
have time
you're
restriction.
super restricted.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you are talking, if it's a feature, you're under 2 hours and you get 1 page for 1 minute of screen time. So
Yeah.
like if you're going over 100 pages, you're writing long and it's really difficult. But I
Mm.
am actually like practically an evangelist about novelists learning to write screenplays. Like I taught a class about it at a conference this year. I have videos on my YouTube channel. Like I am
Yeah.
like always telling novelists, learn to write a screenplay, because when you only have that short amount of time and that you have to really, really take it down to the minimum, it helps you find the core of your story better than anything else,
Right.
because that's all you can present is the core. And you can't, in a screenplay, like you can't write unfilmable stuff. So you don't get to write how someone feels about what they just experienced. And you don't get to write the thing they're thinking in the back of their head while they're saying something else. You
Yeah.
have to just have what can be filmed. And so you get really good at things like subtext and making sure the actions work for the
Hmm.
dialogue.
Hmm.
And so I often tell novelists when they're struggling to write a full length novel, or they're not sure about, is it dragging in the middle, to really learn screenwriting.
Mm.
Because the other thing about screenplays is movies, much more than novels, really depend on expected pacing. Like
Okay.
if you go to a movie, no matter what movie it is, and you start to experience like the big moment that comes in the middle, you
Hmm.
subconsciously know, okay, we're at the middle of this movie. Like
Hmm.
you just kind of know that because you've seen them, you've seen enough to experience that. And we forget that. Like we expect those kind of things when we're experiencing a story. We forget that when we write a novel, because we have a lot more freedom, which is really nice. That is a
Yeah.
really nice thing about writing a novel. There's so much more freedom to explore, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's easy to get lost when you're exploring.
Yeah.
And so
That makes a lot of sense.
figuring out like what is the spine, what is the core of this story, and the most important thing to get across. And like the best way to learn that is to figure out screenwriting, in my mind.
Right. So basically, novelists should just stop complaining and shut up because they have an easier job than
We do,
screenwriters, which
like,
honestly I
as
agree
we
with.
tend to complain a lot, don't we? Like writers tend to complain a lot.
We are
I
such
see it
whiny
all the time
bitches.
and I'm like, why are we complaining? And I find myself doing it too. I'm like, I have the greatest job in the world. Why am I complaining about having to go do my great job?
Listen, preach, sister. Like sometimes even I annoy myself. Like it is. Why are we such whiny little bitches? I don't know. We have an amazing job, truly. Anyway, okay, let's move on. Emily, you have a question for Ray?
I do. So I am a notoriously slow drafter. And I know this on your YouTube channel is something that you talk a lot about, but I'm curious for myself as well as everyone else who is in the same boat as me. What are sort of your tips for writing faster and avoiding distractions, especially during the month of November as NaNoWriMo?
Okay. So my first tip is kind of anti what you just asked. Crap, did I just freeze again? Oh no, you're moving again. Okay.
No,
My
no,
first tip
we're
is
good. Stop scaring me. You're good. Go ahead.
and that's that some people really just are slower drafters. And if that works for you, that's okay. But if it's like this is not working for me and I want to figure something else out, that's when you start exploring other options. Because NaNoWriMo, I love it. I do it every year. It's fabulous. But there's certain writers that just doesn't work for. And it always makes me sad to see people like, I have to do this and I'm miserable because I really need to take 5 months to write this instead of one. And then they struggle. But I like to draft fast. I write my whole novel during November every year. So my tips, the first one, which is not super helpful a week out from Nanowrimo, but is to know really, really well what you're doing, like super well. So the book I'm writing this year, it's different than normal, but it's an idea I've had for years. And I wrote a screenplay of it from January to April of this year. Like, I know it. Typically, that's not the case. Typically, I'm just writing a novel with no screenplay, but like my Make the Fireflies Dance, my book that's coming out, I got that idea in January and wrote it in November. Someone else's summer was like a July to November turnaround. I spend months getting to know my characters and just letting the idea percolate in the background. And then I have like really comprehensive notebooks that I plot out what I'm doing. So I know, which doesn't mean things don't change. Sometimes I get halfway through and it doesn't matter that I spent 10 months planning it. I had the love interest wrong and have to change the whole first half. That's what happened with Make the Fireflies Dance. So I got halfway through and I was like, well, crap, I did that all wrong and had to change it. But having that strong idea, and even if like, I know outlining doesn't work for some people, they really struggle. They feel like it's kind of killed the creativity.
Creative juices.
Even if that's the case, and you really need to be a pantser, if you don't write anything down, that's fine. Like if you're like, I cannot write down an outline, I'll just kill it. But still give your idea some time to sit in the back of your mind, go on walks or long drives or something and just let it form. So even if you haven't worked through the full plot because you just want to discover that as you write, you know your characters so well that you can take them through that plot, no problem. So that's one big one, just knowing what you're doing. The second one is knowing how and when you write best. I don't write every day, even when I'm drafting the full novel during NaNoWriMo. I don't write every day because it doesn't work for me. And I know like the typical advice is write every single day. Stephen King. Oh my gosh. So On Writing is one of my favorite books, but I'm like, sometimes, Stephen, you and I do not get along about certain things.
Tell me about it. This man frustrates me so much on so many levels. Like, I love him, but like, I cannot read his Twitter.
I believe I have an entire video on my YouTube channel about ranting about something that I disagree with him about. And I love him. I went and saw him on a tour a couple years ago, and I was just like so excited to see him. But I actually 2 years ago, I set out to do a every day for the full year writing challenge. And I track everything I do. I track every writing session. I always have. And I was less productive that year than I have been years when I don't write every day. Because it's just not me. So if you do well writing every day, set time aside every day. If you do well waking up before the sun and before everyone else in the house and write, that's fine. But if you're not a morning person, you're not going to force yourself to be productive by getting up at 4:30 in the morning. Like it's just not going to work.
Just because Stephen King says so.
Exactly. I know, like, for a lot of people, especially if you have a different full-time job or you're a parent, you just have to fit it when you can. But if you have the ability to schedule your writing when you know you can be the most productive, absolutely do that.
I mean, listen, we are kindred spirits.
Weird, and I'm afraid I'm losing you.
Yes, you froze a little bit. Can you hear us? Oh, you're back. Okay, perfect. Well, I was gonna say we are kindred spirits for sure.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. There's a bit of a lag.
It's weird. Like, okay, your mouth caught up with your voice now.
Okay, awesome.
For a while, I'm like, oh gosh, she's talking to me, but there's no words coming, and then all these words came really fast.
Oh my god. Okay, perfect. Can you hear me now?
Oh god, Technology. I can. I
Technology.
can.
Wonderful. Okay. I was
Technology.
I was gonna say that
Um,
we are definitely kindred spirits. You know what I mean? Like, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that
yeah.
there are different routines and we all lead different
Yeah.
lives, and we need to adjust to that instead of blindly following someone else's success, even though it's a huge success. Stephen King had different circumstances. He's been writing since 1874, and it's just, it's just very different. But yeah,
Yeah.
you alluded actually to my next question about your NaNoWriMo project. So listen, Ray, I'm actually a fan of yours, and I read your
Oh.
stuff. And you, ma'am, you write young adult fiction. So when I saw you
Mhm.
announce a horror project, I was like, call an ambulance. We lost another one to horror. Why is Rachel Bateman writing horror? Like, tell us about that. How did that
Okay.
come to be?
Well, to set the stage, my favorite movie of all time from the time it came out when I was 13 years old until now is Scream.
Mm.
My favorite movie before that was probably Poltergeist, and my favorite movie before that was Pet Sematary. I started watching horror movies when I was too young to be watching horror movies, because we had very little parental oversight into what we were watching. Like, I had good parents, but they could not care less what we watched. So a lot of horror. I've always loved it. But I also love romantic comedies. I love that newness of being a teenager and falling in love. So it's just basically like the two very different sides of my personality.
Oh,
Um,
we know a person like that,
so
don't we? Kyra, you're listening. Sorry, it's just one of our colleagues. She's exactly like you, basically. She's writing
nice.
like a reverse version of you. She writes gritty horror speculative fiction, but then she has Mickey Mouse on her desk, like she's a Disney person, and she's bubbly, and very social, and she's like always, I don't want to say like struggling, but she's expressed this feeling that I don't know how to consolidate those two personalities that I have. So
I understand that so well. Like,
go
so many
ahead.
people have been so surprised by my love of horror. And like, so when I wrote this screenplay, I was talking to a man who, he used to be the president of Paramount. He now runs something called Story Summit, and he wanted to hear what it was about. And I told him, and he, first of all, he's like, "Did you know I was the executive on Friday the 13th back in the day?" And I was like, "I had no idea."
Wow.
He's like, "But second, in all my years, I have never seen a woman come out and be like, I'm writing slashers. That's what I'm doing." Like, uh, people are always shocked. No one's shocked when they meet me and find out I write young adult romance.
Yeah.
No one's shocked by that. But when
Yeah.
they find out I wrote horror, and fairly brutal horror, they're like, "What?" Like, and it's just two things I love fairly equally.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so
Right. So that's
I
your
just
NaNoWriMo project for this year, and
decided,
it's called
yes,
Blaine, correct?
yes, it's, I have my, there's probably going to be a glare, but
Oh
my
no, we
little,
can see it. Oh, that is so
yeah,
cool.
I printed out, it's the screenplay printed out. So I'm making
Right.
notes right now of things to address in a novel now that I
Right.
have
Right.
more space with it.
Right. Right.
So
But girl, that looks like a legit American Horror Story cover, like
that's,
legit promotional. I love that. No, no,
that,
but really, I like.
that's my goal.
I'm really excited for that, and I can't wait to read it. I will definitely be the
So,
first one to purchase the novel for
oh,
sure.
thanks.
And yeah, speaking of NaNoWriMo, so let's get into that. So we are sponsors for NaNoWriMo this year. We want to
Yes.
support authors who write fiction, get them published, as many, be as helpful as we can. So NaNoWriMo is considered a haven, mostly for authors who are inexperienced, up and coming, unagented, not always, but let's say, obviously not in your case, but let's say in general. So what is the value you see in using it continuously as an author with a home, with a name established already?
Um, the big thing for me, like, I started doing it obviously before I was agented. Someone Else's Summer was a NaNoWriMo book. Um, and that it was finding community.
Mhm.
And now I keep doing it because one, I still love that community. The
Yeah,
group I met that very, when 2014, when I wrote Someone Else's Summer, we still meet together
so
weekly. We
cool.
didn't through the pandemic, but we do again now. Um, And we do that for much of the year
Mm.
round. And
And
so
that's
I
been
still
like
have that
6 years,
community.
right? Since
Mhm.
someone else's summer.
Yeah, well, I wrote it in 2014,
For
so even longer since we
even longer.
first started this. Um, and so I love the community. I love the encouragement, just the excitement of so many people doing it. And really, what it comes down to is, like I said earlier, I like to draft the full first draft in 1 month, but that's not sustainable for me to do over and
Mhm.
over and over again throughout the year.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to really focus and do it like this is my novel I'm writing this year, I may as well
Mhm.
do it when everyone else is doing it and we can meet together. And
Yeah.
like half the time when I meet with my writing group, we get together and we talk and talk and talk and talk, and then we write for a little bit. But during NaNoWriMo, it's like we're all buckled down and focused.
Yeah.
And so just doing it on that schedule with them, make sure I'm not like, okay, guys, I am trying to focus right now, and you're telling me about your week, and I really need to write this. Like, it
Yeah.
just helps. But
Right.
the community aspect is really great, and everyone cheering each other on, and I still really like that. I see a lot of published authors like, well, it's Nanowrimo. This is always my job, and like great, but there's still something
It's not
special about
true.
everyone around the world.
Yeah. Doing the same thing. Focusing on focusing on the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Because like we do have us humans, not just us writers. I think writers especially, but like us human beings, we do have a bit of a herd sheep mentality, don't we? Like we want to do what
Mhm.
everyone else is doing, and it's just I think NaNoWriMo hits the nail on the head in that, and just really satisfying that inner need of being in a group, in a social environment, and still
Yes.
doing something that we love, which is quite an introverted job, if I'm to put it that way. It could be definitely seen that way. No, I'm so happy that you are participating this year as well, Rachel. We are as well, kind of.
I was
Us-
going to ask, are you all doing this?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I am. Yeah, Riley,
Yeah.
what are you working on?
I'm working on the third book in my series for NaNoWrimo. We're gonna try to get it written. I'm scared, but we're gonna try really hard.
Emily, what are you working on this NaNoWrimo?
I am doing the first book in a new series during NaNoWrimo.
That's exciting.
Your high fantasy, you mean?
My high fantasy, yes.
Your high fantasy. Okay, perfect. Well, I mean, I'm so excited. I can't wait for Nano to start. By the way, starts next week. Like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like, it starts next week. I'm like, oh my god, I am not ready for that. Yeah. Anyway, Riley, you have a question for Ray. Let's move
I
on.
do. So does venturing out into a different genre mean you adapt how you write, your writing style to that specific genre and the rules that typically apply there? Or do you adhere to kind of one writing style that you developed when you wrote your first book and you kind of just carry that with you through whatever genre?
I think the answer to that's actually neither.
Mhm.
Um,
Interesting.
I don't
Tell
adapt
me more.
my style for genre. Like
Mhm.
how I write is just how I want to write and how I tell the story. So like even this screenplay here, if you've read enough of my novels and then you read the screenplay, you could pick up my voice in that screenplay and recognize that it's the same person writing.
Mm.
So and as I write this as a novel for horror, it will have that same
Mhm.
voice. Obviously, it's going to be very different from two teenagers falling in love because the teenagers here are getting slaughtered. It's not the same. But that voice and style, I won't adapt, but it's still not the same as when I wrote my first book, just because with every book, I continue to grow. And I feel like if I'm not, it's time probably to be like, I'm going to go work at my mom's accountant's office now because because how boring would it be if you're just churning out the same all the time. So even though I feel like my stories are all strongly mine and that voice carries through them, my style does change and grow and shift with each story. So it's not really either of those.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about growing, because some of the authors, and it's just not, I'm not just talking about modern authors. I'm talking like about the ones who are considered classics now, like F. Scott Fitzgerald. Like, I get it. Trust me, I get it. But like every book that that man has ever produced is basically the same plot, the same characters, and I cannot stand it for the life of me. The Great Gatsby, The Last Tycoon. Please tell me that those books aren't the same, because they're the same story essentially. It's about annoying rich people just trying to enjoy their life. It's just, so I really appreciate you making that point about how important it is to not only adapt to evolve and to adapt, but adapt to the evolving era that we live in. Like, people do not like to read the same stuff now as they did like 15 years ago.
Oh
Would
yeah,
you
it's
agree with
changed
that?
a ton. Yeah, the things shift so much.
Yeah,
And you see it a lot. So I write in YA, and you see it a lot. 15 years ago, you couldn't sell a YA with an 18 or 19-year-old protagonist. You could not sell it.
thank you.
And now you can't sell a YA if your protagonist is under 17. You just can't do it,
Yeah,
because there used to be middle grade, lower YA, and upper YA. And now
yeah,
there's middle grade and upper YA, and this huge chasm right in the middle of kids that we've forgotten like to read.
yeah.
And I'm hoping that, we see more indie YA come up to fill that gap.
Mm,
Unfortunately, most indie YA right now is actually upper YA
mm-hmm.
and even geared toward adults.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. New
But that's
adult.
just
Yeah.
shifts we've seen, and it happens in all genres. That's just where I happen to know the most. People want different things, and it's going to come back down to, there's going to be
Yeah.
eventually that ebb's going to come back, and people are realizing, oh, all these 14 to 17-year-olds want books about them, and they'll
Yeah.
come back in. And we see that with romance. That's why new adult started, is because
Mm-hmm.
romance forgot about a whole time period in life.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you.
Yes.
Finally, I've been saying that for years, and I'm like, oh my God, am I the only one who sees this? It's
There
just.
was a huge gap in the market, and
Mhm.
thankfully there were some great indie authors who filled that gap, and suddenly it's like everyone wants it, and they forget that, like, these people were just writing the stuff that they wanted and no one would give them.
Yeah.
Um,
They
and
didn't see representation, and so they had
Mhm.
to write themselves into the narrative, which is amazing. And then everyone else started doing it again. That cheap mentality. And
Yep.
it's just, I absolutely love to see it.
Yeah, and we see it like outside of ages too. Like, queer fiction was a strongly indie game for so long because
Yeah.
people wouldn't pick it up and publish
No
it.
one would
And
pick
then
it
it
up.
became big, and the publishers were like, holy crap, we can make money on this.
Yeah.
And they start publishing it, which is great because greater access for more people is excellent. But then you have a bunch of people that are like, well, I'm going to write queer fiction because it's what I want, right? Except for you forget about, like, the voices who most need that are who need to be writing it. The voices who,
absolutely. And
like, I
what?
am not the person to write queer fiction, because while
You
I
don't have
love,
that experience. Yeah.
and I love my side characters having different identities than me,
Yeah.
I'm not the person to write about that lived experience. And we easily forget that, like, those voices that came up to fill that gap, they're still there, and there are more there, and we just need to leave room for them.
No, I appreciate you so much for saying that. And you hit the nail on the head with publishers and just like the publishing industry in general, making a surprise Pikachu face anytime something that they thought was not like marketable, and it
I know
starts.
people are constantly telling them, like, there is a market for this, and they're like, but is there really?
Yeah.
And then suddenly ebooks are a thing, and they're like, wow, look at that. People are buying this like crazy. There was a market for it. Like, I love my publisher and I'm happy with where I'm at, but traditional publishing as a whole tends to turn very slowly. And it's fun. It's good to be able to see so many independent authors come out now, because you could see those turns happen really quick. Now,
And they
when you
lead
could
the way,
see,
don't
like,
they?
what,
Most of
exactly.
the time they lead the way, and it's just.
Oh yeah, you could tell what's going to be popular in traditional publishing in like 4 years by what's popular in indie publishing right now, because it takes that long.
It's funny because it's true. Oh my God! Listen,
It is.
Rachel, I would be lucky, happy, willing to talk to you until Christmas. You are so fun. However, we have kept you long enough. So, girls, any final questions, confessions, whatever thoughts you have for Rachel here?
I don't think so.
No,
Thank you for coming and talking with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
you are
My
girl.
last thing I was going to mention about writing
Yes.
fast and I forgot is turn off your
Ooh,
internet.
yeah.
Turn off the dang internet. Don't look at your phone.
Turn
If
on
you
that.
can,
Turn off that
if
Netflix.
if you can, write before you ever look at your phone during the day, but that's not feasible for most human beings anymore.
Mm.
But like put it in a different room if you have to. I go right by the side of the road where there's no cell service sometimes. Sometimes that's what
That's
you
really
gotta do.
smart.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, should I like fly out to the mountains, like to Colorado, just to get Nanowrimo?
There you go.
There you go.
I honestly, the first and second I spend in a hotel room. Because
that's
then I
interesting.
can't look at how messy my house is after Halloween and there's no dogs to take care of. And I'm just like, it's me and my food and my writing, and that's all I have.
And
Yeah.
you need space. That is actually a really good tip. So like find a quiet corner where you can maybe blast music if you like to do that. Yeah, I
Yes.
like to write while I like to write while listening to music. So yeah, I think that's a really good tip.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what better way to end this interview on than on a go to your hotel room and write there. Oh, that's so encouraging. No, I loved every second of this. Thank you so much, Rachel,
Well,
for
thank you for having me. This was a blast. I would just, again, talk to you all day. So,
listen. We would love to have you again. Please stay in touch with us.
for sure.
Be a part of our community. I mean, we have a YouTube channel. You have a YouTube channel. We're basically YouTubers, so we should like, you know what I mean?
My channel is severely neglected, but you know, it's there.
Severely neglected, but still a YouTuber. Again, thank you so much, Rachel, and talk soon, hopefully. Bye bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, wasn't that a blast?
She's delightful.
That's
She
lovely.
She's absolutely delightful. I absolutely love her, and you guys should definitely check out her books. Yes, she writes a young adult fiction, but as you've heard, Ray is venturing out, and she actually was a bit of an inspiration to me back when I was writing Cecilia. Like, definitely one of the sources that I pulled from.
That's
That is
awesome.
why that is why I asked Rachel here, because she has a unique writing style. And if you write young adult fiction, definitely go check her out. Her social media is already linked in the description, Instagram for sure, and I will link her Twitter as well. And now let's get some work done. We will do a quick 10-minute writing sprint, and then we will do a check-in. So girls, what are you working on? Riley, what are you writing?
So I'm kind of getting an early jump on my nano project. I'm working on book 3 of my historical fiction series. So we're going to try to make a little dent in that today.
Okay, Emily.
I am pretty much right in the middle of the third book in my not my high fantasy, sorry, my historical fantasy.
Your historical.
So all the dominoes are falling right now.
Wonderful. I can't wait to hear the continuation of the wait, no, we did that already, didn't we, last week? The library scene.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm still on that. I'm not giving up on having a scene in the library. No, anyway. Yes, so 10 minutes. I'm watching the clock. I, by the way, am not working on anything because I was on the deadline last week with 3 different publications. I am spent, I am tired, and I will be just chilling.
Done.
Yeah. Give yourself that grace. If anyone else watching needs that grace too, like just chill out for 10 minutes and then listen to our rough first drafts of things.
Yes, I mean, our first rough drafts, they would be very funny if they weren't so sad. So yes, I'm watching the clock, chilling. 10 minutes starting now. 2 more minutes, biscuits. Red alert. All right. Pens up, hands up. So let's hear it. Who wants to go first? Which one is less of a bummer to hear? Is my. Oh, God.
You would, Rye.
I was gonna say it's probably not mine. Mine are typically sad.
Right. Okay. Emily, you go then. Start
Okay.
us off.
Okay. I don't think well, it might have spoilers, but the spoilers won't make sense out of context.
Okay.
So, okay. Something clicked into place then, and she made the decision to trust her gut on it before she lost the nerve. And frankly, it wasn't like she had much of a choice in the matter. She pulled out the map to check what lay ahead before following the passage to its end. To her surprise, it ended in a bowling alley. 2 lanes ran parallel to each other, their wooden floor polished to a sheen. The couple that had passed her earlier had joined a small gathering of men and women at the base of each lane, cheering as the members of their team stepped up and knocked pins down at the other end. From the looks of things, the team on the left was winning. Though she blended in with the partygoers, Adelaide hurried past them and slipped into an alcove. She needed a moment to catch her breath and evaluate the situation. Her head still throbbed and her stomach rolled with nausea as if it knew whatever had happened was terribly wrong. Time travel was the best thing she could equate the sensation with, but even that didn't seem quite right because it had felt less like she had traveled back in time and more like time had traveled forward to her, if that was even possible. Though she couldn't explain it, somehow Somehow time here had shifted. In the blink of an eye, she'd gone from 1941 to 1901, from a still quiet house to a vibrant New Year's Eve party, and she was on her own. She thought of the trace she'd had in the library of the mural, painted with scenes from the past falling from the ceiling and shattering all around her, of Juniper's words weeks earlier when she'd confronted her in that very same space. Time is a fickle thing. It easily bends, but very seldom breaks. So which was this, a bending or a breaking?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Ooh. I can feel the nausea that Adelaide feels. And that's what I always appreciate about your writing, Emily. That I'm always, and I think I mentioned this to you before, but that I'm always right there with your characters. That as their head spins, my head spins with them. You know what I mean? Like it's very vivid.
Yeah.
Um, and I like how you talk about time and how fragile it is. Because in my book, I think that time is the most valuable commodity we have, and yet we neglect. So I really appreciate the sentiment.
Thank you.
Right? Go ahead.
Okay. I don't think there's spoilers. Okay. If there are, I'll just skip over them. I'll revert. Her, her words were honest but dug into her soul. She could not imagine a time in her life where the hospital would not be her only source of comfort. If she could not ease her own pain, perhaps she could calm the hearts of soldiers in their distress and their terror. She might not deserve it, but each man felt like a small ticket into heaven. Each life she watched leave earth, each somber letter she wrote home, each victory she saw a man have led her to believe that there was a spot behind the golden gates for her at the end of her life. Her father would have called it pride. She simply called it a gift. Whether it was blasphemy or blessing, she loved it. It was perhaps the smallest things in a hospital nestled in the heart of London that made her days matter after the horrors of the war. We have to leave or we'll never make the boat on time. Nora had emerged in the open doorway, bags in hand. The most sensible one seemed to always keep their time for them. Briar waved one last time at the sweet couple that stood behind her as she crossed the threshold back into the day, knowing that when night fell she would once again be home. It had neared the time in any journey where the voyage home was more exciting than the original venture away. That's it.
Ooh. Listen, so I started reading your book. And I am familiarizing myself with
Yes.
your writing style.
Yes.
And so far, and this excerpt equates to that as well.
Mhm.
Your writing style is so unique, Riley. There
Oh,
is something which is fitting for this live stream, but I'm not. That's not what I'm saying it. That's not the reason I'm saying it. The reason I'm saying it is because it speaks to the way my soul feels most of the time. My somber soul, most of the time, well, feels somber. And
Yep, I like a melancholy vibe.
melancholy vibe. It's very melancholic. It's very like it's evocative of it feels very nostalgic. It almost feels like I am remembering something that I lived rather than reading a historical novel. It feels like I've lived this already. It almost feels like a diary. Does that make sense? Like
No,
my
I'm glad that's the vibe because that's how I consistently feel writing it. It feels like I'm not like creating something. It feels like I'm more just like
remembering.
watching something from the past occur.
Yeah.
So,
It very much it feels like that very much so, and I'm really enjoying it. Yes,
oh yay! I want to know all your thoughts.
I will let you know.
Incredible.
Anyway, so we are at an end of this live stream. We've gone a little over time this time again, but again, like who would cut off Rachel Bateman in the middle of a sentence?
No one should ever.
No one should ever in their right mind. So final messages. Thank you all for joining us today. We are enjoying every minute of this. Please consider submitting your manuscript with us. We would love to read your book. The link to the submission form will be linked. What is wrong with me today? I'm sorry, words are hard. The link to the submission form will be linked in the description below, as well as all our social media and Rachel Bateman. So please go check out her books. And next week, actually, we have a special, very special week prepared because on the night of Halloween, we are doing the final Preptober live stream. And then the next day, we are having the first Nanowrimo live stream of the year.
Yay.
So please check out our social media to check out the schedule, when and how to tune in. And we will see you next week. Bye bye.
Good night.